My name is Chris Rattay, and I'm a church planner with Epicenter Church. So I just want to say hi to all my FBCA family. I've been asked to give you a brief look into my life, into my journey into the heart of the urban poor in East Los Angeles. This is my wonderful family.
I'm Josiah. I'm Jason.
I'm Maggie, and this is Samantha.
We have lived here in this apartment complex for almost 5 years. We have learned a lot. We've tried many things that have failed, but in the end, God has been with us. After years of listening to countless life stories and meeting numerous people, we started a church in our living room. Our church grew out of our apartment, and so we started meeting here in our car garage. We now have this community center, as well as people's homes that we have our meetings in. We have also created a nonprofit called In the City to help meet the whole needs of our community. In the City. It reflects the core value of our ministry, which is found in the incarnation. Jesus is God incarnate, God living among us. Thus all of the leaders of our church live in the community of East LA. It's been quite a journey, but one that we are still just beginning. Well, I don't really have a typical day, but take this past Saturday. I got up, took my 5-year-old son to the park down the street for T-ball sign-ups. I paid $34 for shoes and a glove, an easy expense for my family to absorb, but for some of Josiah's teammates it means $34 of less food for the week. After T-ball, I picked up some high school kids on our track team that I coach, and I took them to USC for a track meet. After the meet, I took them out for some food, always a big hit. As I was taking the last kid home, I drove past his mother at the bus stop. I picked her up, took her to pay a bill, and then got them home around 8 p.m. If I had not picked her up, it would have taken her at least 3 hours on the bus on a Saturday night to do everything. Came home, went to bed. It was a good day. Addictions to alcohol and drugs are a reality here. It is how some people try to escape the pain of poverty. But we should not judge them. I mean, how many people living in the suburbs are addicted to stuff? And substance as well, or spa treatments, TV, shopping, whatever. Addiction is an addiction, and all addiction is destructive. What it means to be human is to worship something. So whether you have money or you don't, if you're not worshiping God, you are going to be addicted to something that is destroying your life. I often hear people say that they don't give to the urban poor in Los Angeles because, they're just going to use the money for alcohol and drugs. Now obviously we're to be wise and not help someone in their substance addiction, but we do need to step back and check our hypocrisy, because we are essentially criticizing the poor for their management of money, but yet none of us are clean in how we manage our money. Whether you're poor and use your only dollar for beer, or are rich and store up a lot of money in your bank account so that your money is your source of security instead of God, or you use your money to buy nice stuff all the time, that's all mismanagement of God's money. We're commanded to give generously, not find ways to excuse our lack of giving. The scripture gives 3 main reasons for poverty: natural disasters like famines, systemic oppression and greed, and then personal sin, laziness. Now the number one reason out of these 3 that the scripture gives is the oppression of the poor and greed. It's spoken about actually more than the other 2 combined. And that is true for my neighbors. Yes, there are some lazy people here in Lincoln Heights, but no more than where you would find in any community. In fact, I've come across some of the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life here in East LA. But property owners squeeze incredibly high rent out of minimum wage workers, and all the while never improve their buildings. There are still tons of apartment complexes in Lincoln Heights that have no rent control. Business owners exploit my neighbors with horrible wages and no benefits. Teachers at the schools here still don't have adequate materials. Employers will not even look at a 30-year-old man who has changed his life but spent time in prison when he was a teenager. And then there's just not enough generosity among middle class and wealthy people, including Christians. Now the scripture is clear that the cause of most poverty in this world is those of us who have the resources, those who are in a position of power. We are the ones responsible, and so we are the ones asked to fix the problem. I wrestled with God on that one. For a while I thought, God, you called Maggie and I to live here, not our kids. How is that fair and loving for our kids? But God told me that if He called us, then He called our kids. We are one family unit. And He reminded me that He called us here ultimately for our good, not for our sacrifice. We are a family of sinners. We do not have the full heart of God yet. His call to move us here was more of a prescription for our sick souls. And I'm starting to see this transformation in our kids. They are becoming very sensitive to the needs of others. My oldest son literally will not let me drive or walk by a homeless man without giving him something. The Scripture never tells us to make our parenting primarily about the kids' safety, because safety really is an illusion. The odds of my kids dying of a stray bullet from gang warfare in this neighborhood is the exact same as the odds of a suburban child dying from a drunk driver. The odds of my kid becoming drug addicts are the same of those in nice neighborhoods. The Scripture asks us to raise our kids to love God first and then to love people, especially the least. Our kids are to know that and live that out. Our family is safe because we are in God's will. My kids, my wife, and I, we will die when God determines it is time, in a way that God determines, whether it is by a bullet, cancer, or old age. I believe Luke 16 sums up the major teaching of the whole Bible on God's call to us who have resources. Luke 16 contains the parable of the shrewd manager and then the parable of the rich man who has the poor beggar Lazarus at his gate. And without getting into all the powerful teaching, we can truly sum it up by this. All Christians are to be in relationship with the poor. If Jesus lives in you, it will show by the fact that you are in relationship with the poor, with the least, in some form, shape, or fashion. It doesn't mean that all Christians are to relocate and to live in urban poor neighborhoods, although there are many more Christians that God is calling to relocate. But it does mean that we will recognize that the greatest threat to our relationship to God in living in middle and upper class neighborhoods is that it isolates us from the poor. So it means that if we are not called to relocate, then we need to make concrete efforts to proactively seek out relationship with the poor and the least. And that is not hard to do in LA, because the poor are always around us. They are truly at our gate. We shouldn't be obsessed over doing big and great things for the poor. It's only going to lead to paralyzing guilt. Instead, we can simply start taking the small, practical steps of getting out of our isolated, homogeneous living to try and build a relationship with the poor. Heed well the clear teaching of Matthew 25. If you build relationship with the least, you will have relationship with God Himself.